I already have a few other videos about Hordak, voiced by Keston John from She-Ra and the Princesses of Power, so I will not go as deep into this character as I could. He's the leader of the evil horde, and at the beginning looks like he would be the main antagonist of the series. Also, I will have to spoiler the entire series because it's hard to talk about Hordak without spoilering anything. He is this very tall, muscular-looking, bat-like alien with a deep, silky voice, who also wears makeup and a dress. It's not quite as visible as it would with a more human-looking character, but once you have seen it, it's hard to not notice that. Especially in the first two seasons, where the viewer doesn't yet know who he truly is. He pretends to be strong and aggressive all the time, trying to intimidate his troops. But the longer the series goes on, the more it becomes apparent that he does this for his own safety and because he tries to follow an unreachable ideal. He tries very hard to be masculine and doesn't quite manage this. Then, in the third season, as his fellow mad scientist Entraptor finally is fed up with his pretending, Hordak confesses that he was cloned as part of a clone army and abandoned for being disabled, and so not being able to fulfill his duty as a soldier anymore. In this scene, Entraptor first sees him without his armor, and in truth he is quite emaciated, with his muscles atrophied, and the armor was only designed to make him look muscular and dangerous. He also shows several ports built into his body, which seem to come from his past as a clone, but which he now uses for the armor to interface with. He was also abandoned because he chose his own name and his own identity. Now he desperately tries to prove his worth, and for his creator, proving his worth means conquering the planet. And I can relate to that so hard. Not the conquering the planet part, but a feeling that I have to prove and overcome my disability to be worth existing. People would hardly ever directly say this, but it is in so many stories and non-fiction and talks between other people that as a disabled person you have to find something you are really good in so that you are not a burden for society and worth existing. But Hordak doesn't learn to accept himself through proving himself worthy, but through becoming friends with Entraptor, who is autistic, and being able to talk with someone else with similar experiences. It was so beautiful to see someone like me having a love story like the ones I experienced in my own life. I don't think I ever saw this in any mainstream media before. Entraptor also ends up building him new armor, which he also uses as a mobility aid, because without the armor his body is so weakened that he faints quite frequently and can't really stand for longer than maybe a minute. And accommodations make a huge difference for him, which is also something true to real life. At the end of the fourth season, Hordak sees his creator and master and brother again, but he doesn't reward him for trying to conquer the planet. He just brutally grabs him and resets him by connecting his own cybernetics with the port at Hordak's neck. It is such a disturbing scene how Hordak doesn't even try to fight back, but just shakes in terror. It also kind of has some sexual assault undertones, which then get even worse in the fifth season, as we see how his creator, Horde Prime, interacts with some of the other clones. Up until this point, it seemed like Hordak's ports were something to make his armor work better, but at least a few of them seem to be there as a means to control all of the clones. Now, of course, in real life, we are thankfully not as far with our technology that people could control someone through some kind of implant they have to aid them with their disability. But as I described in the beginning, there still is quite a danger to having something as part of your body that you don't own yourself, but just some part of a capitalistic system that doesn't care about you, but just wants money. And this kind of also works as an allegory for this. From a meta standpoint, I sadly now also have to talk about the, in large parts, quite ableist and just generally bigoted fandom. There was so much harassment for fans of Hordak, calling them and him cishet, fascist, incel, homophobic, and so on, and also never really mentioning that he's disabled or outright claiming that he isn't disabled at all. They love to pretend that this was because he's a villain, but cutesy, lesbian, able-bodied catgirl Katra is also a villain, and she was not treated like this. It was such a visible double standard, saying that he can't be queer because he's a gross disabled man. And sadly, that is not just something that is said about a fictional character. For me, as an autistic, mentally ill, bisexual woman, I can feel so clearly just how many people in the queer community are disgusted by someone like me being here. And not just that, it also showed quite vividly how when people say they want queer representation or queer characters or queer headcanons, they actually mean stereotypical cis lesbian and cis gay characters. Interrupter is canonically bisexual. Hordak is heavily implied to be queer. Their relationship is very much not the typical pattern of behaviors between a man and a woman, but it can't be queer because it's not a same-sex relationship between two lesbians and two gays, right? It doesn't matter that they are both queer. I am so fed up how we bisexual or trans or asexual and disabled people are talking about this since years, and not just is nobody really caring about it, but if anything, it just got worse. It is so cruel to see this relationship of these two brilliant scientists who were abandoned by their society and more or less forced to become villains, and who found each other and learned to accept themselves through each other, and then claim it's about a disgusting cishet old man who's a pedophile about a young woman who has the mind of a child. But even despite this, I am so glad that this is out there and that stories like mine are being seen in a mainstream fantasy show. And I know that quite a lot of other people also feel like this.